Camden Catholic. So I know this is where we stopped today. We talked about Hernan Cortez and his impacts on the Aztecs. Sorry, I just did a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it's like I feel like it's all over my face. Talked about his impact on the Aztecs. We talked about Columbus and his impact on the Taino people. Lots of different stuff. So we actually moved through an impressive amount of content today. I was pretty proud of us, and it was mainly just because I didn't get terribly distracted like I normally do. But anyway. So we're gonna pick back up off this. Go ahead and write something down on top of this. If this is the last slide that you missed, or you were kind of in the middle of getting a hold of in the class, go ahead and hit pause real fast. Get that. I know Brianne, you mentioned that you needed to see it. So anyway, but it's right there. And then big thing that happened is we're gonna get into now is the establishment of here's the thing. When the Europeans showed up, what's something they sought to establish? It's a settlement, usually in terms of financial gain, sometimes in terms of Protestants seeking new land, things like that. What was it? What do you think it is? Good job. It's the establishment of colonies, right? So, anyway, we're talking about the colonies, particularly from Spain in this flip, right? So, we're here. Now what? So, Isabella and Ferdinand, following the discovery of the North and South American continent, they're not going to simply just leave, right? They're not going to show up, pillage the resources, and go simply because there's a never-ending amount of raw materials, right? So go ahead and write that down. Colonial motivations are gold, God, and glory. So particularly God, you're talking about spreading Catholicism. This is for the Spanish because actually the motivations will change a little bit when it comes to the English and the French. The glory aspect is military dominance and the controlling state of the most land they can possibly get a hold of. And then the gold aspect particularly is an expansion of trade and seeking new raw materials, right? So, because remember, in Europe, they were running out of farmland, right? There were ever-growing population and decreasing amount of land and farmable land was coming up. So now you've got 2 continents worth of area to farm. So anyway, by the mid-1500s, Spain claimed an empire stretching all the way from their continent, or from their area in Europe, all the way over the Atlantic Ocean, from the top of California to the tip of South America, particularly the bottom of Chile. Now, they didn't go into Brazil, mainly because it's a giant rainforest and it's full of, the Amazon River is full of piranhas and shenanigans like that. However, they did control a massive area of land. Now, particularly, their money-making areas are going to be in these islands right here. They're going to get the nickname called the Sugar Islands, and we're going to talk about why that is here in a minute. But as you can see, they even at one point controlled an area from the top of Montana all the way down to Louisiana because the French are going to take that from them later on, etc., etc., etc. Spanish power is huge. The habitable amount of land in the world, they controlled almost 25% of the world at one time. So there was a 1 in 4 chance wherever you were standing, if you could habitate that area, the Spanish owned it, right? So now, continuing forward, though, one of their main objectives is spreading Christianity. Now, particularly Catholicism, all right? Now, why do you think that the explorers felt that they needed to convert the natives? What would be positive about converting the natives? Well, number one, now you're extending area, so now this is even more tithes that the Catholic Church can bring in, but also because they feel that they're doing the work of God, right? Because to the Spanish, winning souls for Christianity was just as important as winning land. Now, in parentheses next to that, you should put probably a big relation. A lot of that goes hand in hand with the ideas of the Spanish Inquisition that was adopted by Isabella and Ferdinand. The idea that to not attempt to convert people to Catholicism, you are leading them astray, and you should extradite all those people who refuse, right? So now this is going to be a big part of why they actually forced a lot of the natives into a labor system that we're going to get into in just a couple of seconds. Now, the Spanish, with the help of the Catholic Church, though, early on, are going to work to convert natives by building churches and regulating the Spanish settlers. They're going to try and bring them in nice-like, okay? Because there was a lot of complaints from early Spanish settlers like Juan de Ponce de Leon, and he actually complained about Columbus's treatment of the natives, saying that things like rape were being endorsed, murder, and abuse of native people for sport and spite. And so the Catholic Church is going to tell them, look, they are souls that can be brought towards the light, right? Now, unfortunately, a lot of bicolorism issues are going to pop up, and no matter what, even if they were converted and they did go to Catholicism, there was not necessarily equal rights. And a lot of that has to do with the color of their skin. Now, we'll get into that later on. Some of you are like rolling your eyes and stuff. Like, well, it's true. It did happen. Actually, to a point that when we get into their social class system that popped up above mixed race people going forward. It's like towards the end of this presentation. So anyway, controlling trade was a major aspect too. This is where that gold aspect comes into play, right? We just had our God aspect. So controlling trade, the most valuable thing to the Spanish were the gold and silver mines that they came across, particularly the silver mines, okay? The silver was in giant plenty in North and South America, particularly in Central America, right? So a lot of this has to do with the fact that these are softer metals that are actually located, remember when we talked about Pangaea, and we talked about the area of Pangaea, North and South America being towards the outside. So, anyway, boom. That is a Spanish silver mine. Somebody tell me really quick, just shout it out, what are some things that are wrong with this picture? Good job, Claire. It doesn't look very safe. It could collapse at any minute. There are no real reinforcements, okay? Good job, Linkowski. It's dark, right? It's very, very hard to see. Easily can get lost underground. Now, there's one, waiting to see if I can hear it. Reinbauer, my man. Good job. Explosions could easily occur underground. There could be methane gas leaks, and if there was a small spark, or if it lit off a candle that was being used for light, it could easily lead to a giant explosion underground. So the mines are going to kill thousands of natives. Thousands of natives. It's going to become a huge problem, especially with this forced labor system we're about to talk about. Really cool fun fact. It's where, like, in the mines, to check for gas leaks, they would actually take a small yellow bird, a canary, they'd hang him in a cage on top of the mine shaft. And since methane gas is lighter than air, it sought to fill up the roof of the mine shaft first on its way trying to find an escape out the other end. And if the bird died or was dead, it's not like Steve forgot to feed it on his day off. It was because the bird's small lungs had been inhaling this gas, and the bird died, so they knew if the canary was dead, it was time to get out. So, really cool little fact. Anyway. Now, the colony's main other thing is they're going to ship raw materials. Now, a raw material is any material that has yet to be processed by a factory. The big ones are particular like food items, i.e. like pineapples, bananas, vanilla bean, cocoa bean, things like that. Coffee was a big thing just because it grew so well in areas of Central America due to the high heat. And remember, this was a big issue of farmable land, right? So they were seeking area to farm products that they already had in Europe in this area. Now, cotton was another big thing, but sugarcane was the biggest out of all of them. Sugarcane is used to make molasses, sugar, and rum. However, sugarcane could be grown on large plantations and you needed a lot of workers, right? Anyway, now that right there is a depiction of a sugarcane from the 1890s. Now, you'll notice one thing in particular, yes, slave labor is being used, but in the earliest, in the 1600s sugarcane plantations, it was actually the natives that were working it, and we'll talk about that again in a second. It uses a lot of child labor, especially, as you can see right here, mainly because adults would actually end up throwing out their backs because you need to cut a sugarcane stalk off at the bottom. Now, anyway, so that is what sugarcane looks like in real life. In a real photo, you can actually break it off and chew on it if you'd like, but it comes out very watery. You have to cook it down to actually create the sugar and reduce the amount of water inside of it. Anyway, laws are going to forbid colonists from trading with anyone else but Spain. This is it right there, if you put it in parentheses, called an embargo, right? Spain sent manufactured goods back to the colonies, like clothes and building materials. So this entire thing is just a money-making machine for the Spanish. Money-making machine. And then following this is actually under the reign of Charles V, and then his son is going to take over Philip II. We're going to talk about them in the next unit. And they actually amassed the largest amount of money that any European power or any European country had in all of history. So, now, this was a huge thing that helped them make a ton of money. The encomienda. All right, so if you say it with a low, raspy voice, it sounds a lot cooler. So go ahead and give it a shot. Encomienda. Yeah, exactly. So, it's a system of forced labor. Now, here's the thing. Slaves are expensive, right? So the average cost of a slave during the 1600s is about 250, what you would call dollars now. Now, in their money, that was thousands of dollars, more than around $60,000. That's for one properly well-built slave, right? So now that's leading to a huge cost. So the Spanish are going to save money by instating the encomienda system. Now, the encomienda, it gave colonists the right to force natives to work by law, okay? So if the natives refused, much like when they would refuse Christianity, conquistadors had full right to hunt them down and kill them. They would usually send dogs on them and then also sometimes go after their families first. So the natives are actually going to be forced to work under this encomienda system, right? Huge issue is going to lead to the death of a lot of natives in their slash and burn techniques that they actually adopted from the Mayans. And they're going to be used to plant sugarcane fields, harvest sugarcane. Also, the main place, though, that they worked was in the mines, right? So the natives worked mainly in the mines and on plantations. The mines, though, are going to end up killing thousands of natives through poor conditions, no ventilation, and also exhaustion, right? Literally working to the point of exhaustion. Now, the native children are going to actually also be used in the mines for getting inside of small holes, dragging mine carts that could weigh upwards of 500 pounds that was full of silver bullion, which is unprocessed silver. And then they were also used to open ventilation shafts. And I'll tell you the concept of why that was so dangerous, because it's not as easy as just opening a window. You're actually sitting on top of a shaft that actually is about 50 feet deep. So no seatbelts either. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But here is actually a depiction from the 1650s of a native child dragging a cart. As you can see, it's not even a cart, it's a sled, and that's full of silver bullion. It can weigh upwards of 500 pounds. It's dark. If that candle goes out, then he is blind and cannot see. And sometimes tunnels, excuse me. Sometimes these tunnels will actually be able to fork at certain areas, so if that goes out, he could possibly get lost down there and starve to death. So let's keep going. We only got a little bit left. That's the wrong dying. That's as if I were dyeing them a color. That's terrible. All right, anyway, now, the dying natives are going to cause a labor shortage, actually, and the Spanish are going to begin to bring in slaves from Africa by the boatload, particularly shipping them through the sugar islands, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic now. Actually, it was called Hispaniola at the time. Now, the colonial society and culture is going to change massively, though, because cultural diffusion is going to begin to blend native society with the Spanish society. What you call Latin Americans now, the reason why for their darker skin tone, is actually because they are the original natives bred through the Europeans. And actually, we have a race of people today that the world has never seen until the last about 200 years. And but cities and towns are going to begin to pop up in certain settlements, like San Juan is a very, very old one. St. Augustine in Florida was another Spanish settlement. Lots of different towns and colonies are going to pop up. And this includes homes, markets, government buildings, harbors, etc. And social classes are going to begin to develop when many races begin to mix together. And this is where we'll leave off right here. One of the biggest class dissension things happened when natives and Europeans and natives and Africans began to mix together. They were not considered a top of the pack. They were actually right above the very bottom. At the very bottom of social society in the Spanish colonies, the slaves and natives had no rights whatsoever. These people were just slightly above them. They're called mestizos and mulattoes. Now, a mestizo is when you take a native and a European and you blend them together, and a mulatto is if an African and a person of European descent actually had a child. So this is going to cause a lot of social class struggles and things like that, but starting tomorrow, we're going to get into the English colonies. I'm sorry, someone's calling me right now. Give me 1 second. Starting tomorrow, we're going to get into the English colonies, and we'll talk about that then. So y'all have a good evening. All right, Camden Catholic.